Hey guys, sorry about that. My webcam was acting up for some reason. I couldn't get it to work, but I think we're good now. Let me know if the microphone is okay. I know my audio was having some issues the other day, but hopefully we got it all fixed up. Um, this case with Lindsay Clancy in Massachusetts, it's one that I've been asked about a bunch because my background, of course, and how I got started on YouTube was talking about a case where I talked about things based on my expertise and working in psych for so long. And I thought about it a lot, and I didn't want to go over and watch the trial live because this is like an incredibly tragic situation, an incredibly tragic case, and I just couldn't sit in front of a camera and watch that as it was happening. So I resigned to just thinking I would recap after the fact, after closing statements, and I wouldn't really do anything until after that. And I'm still going to do that after closing statements, right? But I have been seeing an increasing number of kind of crazy things online. And I just wanted to talk about it. I understand that this is a very emotional case, right? And you see a lot of people weighing in based on their experience as a nurse or a doctor or a forensic scientist or somebody who's had kids and had postpartum depression. You have people who really hate Lindsay Clancy and think she's a murderer who deserves the worst. You have people who totally sympathize with her and think that she shouldn't even be on trial. And then you don't see a lot of people in the middle, You see a lot of extreme opinions about this. And a lot of that is because I think that people who have a more nuanced view are honestly, I'm going to put this hat on because if I don't, I'm going to be touching my hair the entire time, and that would be annoying. People who have more nuanced opinions are probably kind of afraid, honestly, and I see that a lot, where it's like a lot of people have moderate views, but you get attacked by people online if you say, hey, hold the brakes a little bit here, this doesn't really make sense, or maybe you shouldn't be doing this or saying this without having all the facts. And it's just, people who have more neutral opinions see extremism on one side of the line or the other, in this case, and a lot of other things we see in politics, etc. And they're afraid to kind of put their voice out there because then both sides are going to attack them, right? So I can relate to that. My name is Lauren. If you're new here, I'm not a doctor, okay? So I don't diagnose people. I don't prescribe them medications. I had worked in various psych wards around where I live for several years, and I worked in the emergency room with the doctors who were like overworked ER doctors who would consult me when a Baker Act patient came in Florida. That's what happens when you have an involuntary psych hold if you're in a crisis. They bring you into the hospital under a Baker Act. Or when somebody voluntarily presented with psychiatric symptoms and was concerned about needing help. So they would consult me to do the initial psych eval there, and I would work with them to determine, is this person being truthful? Is this person actually in active psychosis, or do they seem like they might be malingering? Is this person actually going to hurt themselves or someone else? Or does this person have a history of making, like dramatic statements and then retracting them as soon as they get to the hospital? Because that happens sometimes with a lot of recurring patients. It's not like being a doctor where you sit down and give someone meds and talk to them about their symptoms month after month, right? It's like when somebody is in a state of crisis, in a state of emergency, they have just tried to harm themselves or get, off themselves, or they are in an active psychosis. That would be me. I would go see that person first. So I'm used to seeing people in these kinds of crisis states, and I'm used to having uncomfortable conversations with people. For example, when people come in with superficial cuts and say, I tried to off myself. You have to have uncomfortable conversations with those people. You say, hey, I've seen you 5 times here this month, and I noticed that you didn't cut deep enough to harm yourself. You also cut yourself on a place where you knew it wasn't going to be fatal. What's going on? And it's uncomfortable. And you think, as a layperson, a lot of people will think, oh my God, you can't just say that. Oh my God, you can't. No, you have to. You have to evaluate like all the possibilities, ask all the hard questions. And I believe that Lindsay Clancy's emergency room providers did that. Hey, Bruce, what's up? How's it going? I will say this, and we'll get into a little bit about the kind of theories that she didn't do it or whatever in a few minutes, or not a few minutes, but more than that. But I will say this. I am not going to assume that every hardworking person in that emergency room who sacrifices their personal life to do 12 to 16-hour shifts, sacrifices time with their families, and because they have such care for their patients. And if you're a healthcare worker and you're doing that shift, especially as a nurse in the ER, you're doing it because you like your job a lot of the time. You know, some people don't, right? But some people need a paycheck, right? But a lot of the time you like your job, right? I'm not going to assume every single person in that emergency room failed to communicate to law enforcement that something impossible happened, right? Like her temperature dropping after she sustained significant injuries, which would likely have worsened over the time she was found, the time she got to the hospital. I am not going to assume that every single person in that emergency room and every single person in that police department and every single person since then has decided we're not going to look into this impossible happening, because they were obviously aware that it happened. And you'll see people online talk about things in terms of their personal experience. Here's the thing. In this case, in this kind of situation, you cannot go just off your personal experience, because everybody who experiences psychosis is not the same. Everybody who experiences suicidal ideation is not the same. Every doctor, every nurse does not have the same opinion on whether or not her temperature could have dropped that fast. Every doctor, every nurse doesn't have the same opinion about whether or not she actually tried to off herself. So it's really, it's not cut and dry. Let's put it that way. And I see a lot of people making comments as if it were cut and dry. I want to point out that this was the worst night of that family's life. Patrick Clancy and Lindsay Clancy were both investigated. That's why you see pictures, surveillance of Patrick, because the police did look into him and his whereabouts. They did pay attention to what he was doing. They did, have doctors evaluate her, and if there was some sort of anomaly where they would say there's no possible way her temperature could have dropped this far, they would have had to communicate that to law enforcement. And I don't believe random emergency room workers who are just trying to save people's lives would randomly decide they wanted to withhold that. Okay? So it's quite possible that there's an explanation for it. Everybody is trying to come at this from a lens of, I know how this feels, or I know that's impossible, or I've never seen that. It doesn't matter what you've seen or what you felt. Okay. Sometimes that helps us in situations where we need to evaluate relationships in our personal lives. Sometimes it can give you better insight into possibilities. It does not give you like the unrestricted right to call Patrick Clancy Chris Watts 2.0. It does not mean that if you've suffered from postpartum depression, you should be online hashtagging "We are Lindsay Clancy." You are not Lindsay Clancy. She is. Her 3 kids are dead. She and her husband have been mourning that since it happened. You can see her emotion throughout the trial. And whether or not she is criminally liable, she killed those children. Whether you believe that she was genuinely psychotic or not, she killed them. And it's very sad. And if you think her husband moved on too fast, don't be his friend. I don't know what to tell you. Like, we don't get to, these are private citizens. This isn't a celebrity legal drama, right? We're not going to know every detail of these people's lives. We don't get to know that. We only get to know their answers to what they're being asked on the stand. and what has been presented in public court documents. We are not entitled to know every thought or feeling those people have had throughout this process. We are not entitled to know every single thing that happened every second that she was in the hospital. We are not entitled to know all the details of Patrick Clancy's private relationship. It's ridiculous how people are kind of crossing this boundary into thinking, well, I want to see this, I want to see that. You're not an investigator. I'm sorry. Like, I understand wanting to know that. I understand wanting answers to questions. However, in absence of information that we are not entitled to, it is not right to declare definitively, this woman didn't do this, or this woman, she absolutely murdered them on purpose, and she was not psychotic, she's pretending. There's no reason to automatically declare, she was psychotic, she didn't know what she was doing. I am Lindsay, I stand with Lindsay. That's too much, dude. It's too much, in my opinion. It's just kind of crazy. Like, these people, they have families. She has family. He has family. All of that family loved their kids. Those children had friends. They had friends who, probably the ones that were old enough to realize it, missed them dearly. And someday, if they don't know already, they will come to learn what happened to their friend, and they'll be horrified. And they'll be looking online to get more information about it. And this is what they're going to see. It's a fucking circus. And it's disgusting. I understand that people have questions about inconsistencies. I understand that people, want to understand what exactly happened, but not fully understanding what happened or having questions about why certain things were dealt with a certain way is not a reason to point at somebody and call them Chris Watts. It's not a reason to declare definitively that you absolutely know what was going on in Lindsay Clancy's mind that night. So, is she criminally liable? Is she responsible? Was she faking it? I don't know. I don't know. I will tell you that every single time I have ever made a determination that I thought somebody wasn't telling the truth is because I talked to them directly, I observed their behavior directly, and I went based on my knowledge and understanding of these conditions and what I've seen in practice. If I just looked at somebody on the internet, I couldn't tell you that. And too many people are trying to declare definitively and emotionally and, that they definitely know what happened. It's driving me a little nuts. So the first thing that really stuck out to me, was bothering me, was people saying, Lindsay is a nurse. She knows how to cut herself. And let me pull up this article here. All right. Let me share this tab so we can talk about that a little bit. Are prosecutors suggesting that Lindsay Clancy's suicide attempt was faked? Doctor points to superficial wounds. And we'll talk a little bit about superficial wounds in a second. All right. Let me just get down. I'm going to skim over the part where they're just describing the background because we all know what happened here. Okay. Dr. Kelly McDonough, an emergency room physician who treated Clancy on the night of the killings, testified that she observed superficial lacerations on Clancy's wrist after prosecutors asked about the extent of her injuries. According to McDonough, the main concern was the injury to Clancy's spine. Prosecutors also asked ICU nurse Megan Collins if cuts to Clancy's neck and wrists needed frequent medical attention, to which she said they did not. At the outset of the trial, Clancy's attorney, Kevin Reddington, seemed to anticipate the prosecution's apparent strategy. This is no fake suicide, Reddington said during opening statements as he showed the jury gruesome photos of Clancy in the hospital. Clancy is in a wheelchair after she was paralyzed as a result of jumping from the window. Okay. So let's talk about the superficial cuts. I've seen many people come through the ER, some of them through the trauma department, needing stitches because they wanted to hurt themselves. They knew how to do it, but thinking about it, even planning it, is a very, very different thing. A very different thing than doing it. You have to go against every instinct your brain and your body have to harm yourself. It is not that easy for most people. Of course, I have seen some habitual patients come in and out who do frequently harm themselves, but that is a different case, right? That's a bad coping mechanism, a bad habit that they need to break. This is different. If you are a nurse, you know how to cut yourself. Therefore, Lindsay must not have been trying to off herself. That is bizarre to me because most adults know how to do it if they really want to. But there's a reason people try and fail. It's because it's exceedingly hard to hurt yourself like that. So that assumption is meaningless to me. And I wish people would stop repeating it, because the number of people I have seen come in devastated and, hurt and at their rock bottom, who wanted to harm themselves because they thought they had no other choice, or they just couldn't take it anymore, who genuinely wanted to die, but they didn't succeed. I feel like saying what they're saying about Lindsay being a nurse, right? That's a disservice to everyone who has ever struggled with suicidal thoughts, who has ever attempted to take their own life and needed help. But people are minimizing it as if, well, if you didn't do it right, you must not have meant it. And that's just not true. And I'll tell you something else about Baker Act patients who have come in after attempting suicide or having suicidal thoughts. Not a single one of them, after failing to do it by cutting themselves, launched themselves out a window. And I know I've seen people say, she jumped out a second story, she knows that won't kill her. Fuck no, that's not true. It very well can kill you if you land the wrong way, right? She coded in the hospital. She needed a blood transfusion. It very well could have killed her, especially if it took him longer to get home. So I don't know why we're pretending like the falling from the second story window wasn't a fatal decision. It very well could be. And people who don't really want to kill themselves don't take risks like that. They don't say, oh, well, if I actually die in the process, oopsie. No, that's not how that works. If people make superficial cuts on themselves for other reasons other than I want to kill myself, they're not going to then take a risk and be like, well, I'll do this. That'll be more fun. No. There's a clear purpose to that. You don't just jump or fall or whatever on purpose out a window if you don't want to do serious harm to yourself. All right, hold on. Let me pull up. And this is I wanted to go over with you guys the transcript of the 911 call. Okay, I know it's a little, it's hard to read. I don't know if it'll let me zoom in like that. Oh, well. So this guy is a reporter who's been inside the courtroom, right? And he transcribed the 911 hearing call for us. Of course, that has not been made publicly available. I don't think it should be made publicly available. I just don't. There's some things that the general public does not need to hear. The jury needs to hear it, but the general public does not. And I understand people will come up with their weird theories because they can't hear or see everything. But that doesn't mean anything nefarious is happening here. It's that these are like private citizens who have been through a tragedy. Even if you think Lindsay is guilty, as in she should be held criminally liable, if you think she's lying about her mental health, Patrick in that situation would still have gone through something deeply personal and tragic, and the whole world shouldn't hear that. The jury should, because they're making a decision here, but there are some things that the public is not privy to, and I think it should be that way. So, all right. We'll look at the transcript here from Nate Eaton. It says he starts by explaining how she tried to commit suicide, multiple voices. Where is she now? He's saying, stay awake. How old is she? 31 to 33. Is she awake? Yes. Is she breathing? Yeah. Okay, Patrick says, Lindsay, what did you do to your neck? She's talking. They say, when? He says, last half hour. How far did she fall? 20 feet. Multiple voices. Okay. Is she responding normally? He says, a little bit. So not much. Because people in that kind of state, it's not impossible that they could communicate some, but they're probably not going to be speaking in full sentences, right? Okay. What part of the body was injured? Neck. She's breathing. Lindsay, look at me. Look at me. Are there weapons? He says, I don't see any. Where are the kids? Multiple voices are speaking. So that means they're both speaking. So they could hear Lindsay in the background of this because they were the only two people present. The caller says, do not move her. Patrick says, open your eyes. Can someone... Okay, Lindsay, look at me. Open your eyes. I'm going to tell you how to stop the bleeding. It's not bleeding. Open wounds. She's in the backyard. They ask, is there something on her neck? He says, a knife or something. Can you put pressure on it? No. Then they hear both of their voices again. Patrick says, Lindsay, wake up. Then you can hear Lindsay moaning. Says, put pressure on the cut. The person on the other end of the line says. Patrick says, Lindsay, look at me. Say my name. She's conscious. They say, don't move her. Tell her to be still. Then they apparently can hear background whimpering. Sirens in the distance. I'm going to stay on the line with you. Is there a fence? Right here, right here. I need you to stay and go check on my kids. Hello, footsteps. Guys, guys. And then there's, oh no, yelling. Okay. He's saying, wake up, screaming, screaming. What is he screaming about? Crying, screaming, gasping. Oh my God. Screaming, screaming. Hello, what's going on? Basement. Oh my God. Hello, hello. And he's just screaming. He's just screaming. She killed the kids. Oh my God. And then he's just screaming. He's just screaming. Nobody needs to hear that. Nobody needs to hear the moment that man found his dead kids. That's terrible. But I thought that people should see the transcript, as hard as it is to read and to think about. I think people stop looking at Lindsay and Patrick as humans a lot of the time throughout these trials. And look, I have friends who I see commenting about this, and I disagree with them. I don't hate them, right? I think there are some people who just genuinely want to fill in what they perceive to be gaps in the story, even though I disagree, right? They think there's gaps in the story. They think there's inconsistencies in the story, and they're just trying to understand. They're trying to figure out what happened, right? But there are people out there who are just berating and slamming this man they've never met. Because in my opinion, this is so dark and so terrible that this could actually happen, that they have to look for another explanation, right? And I'm not talking about people who are just asking questions. I'm not talking about people who are just trying to understand. I'm talking about people who get online and spread really strange theories, not even theories. They state this as a fact, that Patrick drugged her and threw her out a window, that he definitely killed them, that he's Chris Watts 2.0. There's no evidence to support that he is Chris Watts 2.0. Not having an answer to questions, or even suspecting that something is off, even if you think something is off. That's not evidence that he did it. And people don't seem to understand that. So let me pull up I just want to show you just a couple of examples of what I'm talking about here, because it is bizarre. I'm not talking about, like I've got friends, like I said, who cover this and who have different opinions than me. For example, I think I haven't seen everything that she's done on this case because I actively stopped watching content on this case for a bit. I've seen Elsie talk about it, right? And I don't think Elsie's a terrible person, right? I don't think Elsie's a terrible person for having a different outlook than me, right? But there are people online who are fucking batshit insane. Batshit. It's awful. Okay, let me pull this up here. Move my head a little bit. So this is something I wrote earlier today about some, and this is just a small sample of some very crazy ass TikTok comments. I wrote here, absolutely bonkers response to the Lindsay Clancy case. There are people who have questions about why they feel something is inconsistent or something they don't know. That I can understand. But on the other hand, are the people who are pushing forth wild accusations, these are not questions, and intentional misinformation about Patrick Clancy. They are toxic and careless. I truly hope Patrick and Lindsay's families aren't subject to seeing this. Everyone involved deserves better. And I would encourage people, before they make accusations like that, to think about your mom and dad, your kids, your sisters or brothers, your friends who love you, and what it would be like if you were ever put in a situation where you were accused of something you didn't do, and how it would feel to have horrible, almost certainly false accusations put out there as statements of fact for everyone you love to read. Awful. Because when you do something like this, the comments that I'm about to read, when you do something like this, you are not just hurting the person you're falsely accusing. You're hurting the people they love who love them. You're taking the focus off of postpartum mental health and important conversations around Lindsay's situations that need to be had, whether you think she's criminally liable or not. It's a distraction, and it's horrible, and it's hurtful, and it needs to stop. And I'm going to read you this sample of comments that Donna put up right here, so you know the difference between people who are just talking about the case, asking questions, talking about their thought process, versus the people I'm talking about. These are the kinds of people I'm talking about. All right. And I don't know if you can see that yet. You can. He drugged her and left her locked in the room to die. Except she came to, tried to get out, but the door was locked. Hence the blood on the inside doorknob. She's panicked and worried about the kids, so she tries to climb out the window, blood on shingles, but falls. Where's the allegedly in there? And let me tell you something about that. Saying allegedly is not a blanket protection to defamation. Like these random TikTok commenters, they're faceless profiles, they're probably not going to get sued, right? But someday, somebody with a large platform who puts this stuff out into the universe, even if they say allegedly, is going to get in a lot of trouble. I've seen a lot of cases lately where people are saying blatantly awful things about people, and then they say like, oh, allegedly, allegedly. I'm like, no, that's not an allegation. That's not an allegation. If somebody were accused of a crime formally, that would be an allegation. If you make up some weirdo shit and post it like this, or say it on your TikTok like this, as if it's definitely what happened, even if you say allegedly, there was no allegation of that. You made it up. You made it up. And you spread it with reckless disregard for the truth, based on the evidence that's being presented at this trial, and her stipulating that she did it. And all this time, she has always admitted to doing it. Allegedly isn't going to protect everyone from this. There is going to be, someday, somebody's going to face some severe consequences for defaming innocent people in the kinds of cases we've been seeing recently. All right, here's another one. He came back, took his boots off, chucked her out the window, changed clothes, went back out to restaurant, came back, murdered baby, called 911, put on a show in front of the first responders. Do you see the transcripts that we just read? Just from reading that, you can tell it was excruciating to relive that in the courtroom. I know some jurors had to have a break because it was so awful. And imagine using that, which you have not heard, and she probably hasn't even read the transcript, and calling that putting on a show. That family lost their children. And whether Lindsay knowingly and intentionally killed them, or she was in a state of psychosis where she was out of control, their kids are dead. And this is sick. It's also disgusting because it's like, it's even more embarrassing, I feel like, for that entire family. Why do we want to shame people who we don't know have done anything wrong? Jen, hey, just joining, but have you discussed Lindsay's civil lawsuit where she admits to killing the kids? Thank you for asking that, Jen. I have not. If you could help me find the documents, I would really like to go over that on a separate stream. It's not going to be tonight, though. So, all right. If Patrick did it, I think Lindsay went out the window sometime before he left for CVS at 5:30, not 5:15 like he claimed. Oh, you think that? That's awesome. He left the kids inside alone, probably in the basement, eating dinner with the drugged drinks. Who drugged a drink? Who said that? No one. You fucking nut. And locked the bedroom door so they could not mess up the crime scene while he was gone. He probably took the key from Cora's room with him before he left to save some time retrieving it. Seriously, what in everything that has been shown would give you that idea? That's batshit insane. You invented that out of thin air. He probably took the key from Cora's room just to save some time. Where do you get that? Where do you get that? This is not questioning the evidence that's being presented. It's not questioning what people are saying on the stand. That's random. You're a psycho. I think that he called himself from Lindsay's Apple Watch while inside CVS as alibi. She was still alive and, well, while he was gone. Okay, so there should be location data then on that Apple Watch, yes? If it was turned on to call himself? At which point when you were working for the police department did you investigate the data and location, location data and communication data on that Apple Watch? Nutbag. And sometimes people criticize me, guys, because I worked in psych. I still do, but only part-time PRN. During the day on my full-time job, I work in trying to get people's appealed healthcare insurance denials overturned when they can't get their bills paid. But people will criticize me sometimes because I worked in psych and I say things like, you're crazy, you're insane, you're a nutbag. When I see people who are genuinely struggling, I don't think they're a nutbag. When I see someone who's genuinely in a state of like psychosis and needs help and needs medication or to, stabilize their condition, I'm not thinking, oh my God, you're a nutbag. I'm not thinking about that. I'm thinking about that as in like, this person needs treatment, this person needs help. When I see random unhinged people on the internet spreading shit like this, then I think you're a nutbag because you're just doing it for fun. It's a choice. That's not a condition you can't help. It's a choice to be an asshole. So when he left CVS, he drove closer to his house, parked, ran inside, and took his, and I don't know what the rest of this says, but I'm kind of glad she didn't post the rest of it, to be honest, because that was just terrible. But it's all stupid shit like this. Okay. Hold on. Somebody says, the problem with Patrick's story is those 8 minutes, though. It's incomprehensible that it allegedly took Patrick 8 minutes to find his kids, even though Lindsay allegedly told him where they were. So let me tell you this. This is not personal. I don't think you're a terrible person, but I think it's your problem with Patrick's story. It's your problem. It's not the problem. That's not evidence of anything, especially if you just come home to your wife outside having done horrible damage to herself. Like, that's not unexplainable. When you see someone like that and it's your loved one, you're could be in a state of shock. It's not for us to judge how long it took him to figure that out. You deal with the immediate problem first, right? Even he sounds like he was panicking in that 911 call. So that could be your problem with his story, but it is not a legal problem. It is not an actual official problem with the story. Patrick was investigated. His location was investigated. That's why you see surveillance cameras. I'm sure he was interviewed by the police for hours. So yes, people have a problem with his story, but it's not because there actually is one. That's just my thought. That's just my opinion. And you're welcome to think that if you want, but I don't agree with you on that. I got to tell you. So, so again, like, this is my thing though, like that comment that I just read, like, that's somebody thinking like there are these 8 minutes that don't make sense to me, right? And I think when people have questions like that and they frame it like that, and they're like, well, those 8 minutes don't make sense. Even though I disagree, it's like, okay, that's just a conversation, right? But those people whose tweets I was just reading, that's not what was going on there, right? And that's not what's happening on TikTok. It's not what's happening online, right? It's like some insane people coming up with crazy like theories about how Patrick is a supervillain. It's insane, right? Okay. Let me pull up this here. Before I do, though, I just want to say, people talk about Patrick, and even I've seen people even extend comments to the rest of the family, right? People talk about them as if they should be charged with negligence of some kind. And I'll tell you this. No regular person is supposed to be tasked with minding someone 24/7. If somebody needs that kind of observation, they should be in a hospital, and the medical providers that she saw should have called DCF. They should have called DCF if the situation was that severe. If she reported she was thinking about harming the children, okay? And they also should have had her on one-to-one observation inpatient. This is no one else's fault, except for, unfortunately, Lindsay. If you believe that she truly is innocent by reason of insanity, she still did it, right? And the doctors who failed to hospitalize her. And to point this out, she had those virtual health appointments, right? And I think if we have somebody who is suffering that much, who has been an inpatient and has been discharged from inpatient, even recently or not, like, we should do better about following up in person, because an online visit, I'll tell you how an online visit goes. It's like less than 15 minutes, probably. And your psychiatrist, they're not a therapist, so they don't have infinite time with you. They don't really check in with you like that. But if somebody, I believe, based on what I know about how our system works, right? I believe that we should push harder to have, in-person appointments with people after they've been discharged from an inpatient stay, or after they have expressed any kind of thoughts of harm or doom or anything like that. I know that you can't force her if she decided to change her appointment from in-person to Zoom. You can't force her, right? Probably not. But at that point, you need to start taking things a little more seriously. Start thinking, okay, why is this person avoiding me? Why are they switching to Zoom? And yes, you could say it's because she's a busy mother with 3 kids, right? You could say that. However, we need to be doing better about trying to, follow up in person, and maybe say, like, is there someone else who can take care of the kids? And if there's not, can you, follow up with me in X amount of days or whatever? Don't be like, oh, there's your 15 minutes for the month or the 3 months and see you later. Right? How can you say she killed them? That's not certain. He told her she killed them. No, I'm sorry. No. No, sorry. That's not happening. All right. So let me pull up here. There's one more thing I wanted to go over. So here's just some problems with some of these theories, which I'm going to show you. And this comes from my favorite, one of my favorite YouTubers. His name is Ruin Leon. I don't agree with him on everything, right? But I agree with him on a lot of things. So I'll pull it up here. And we'll go over a few minutes of this, and then we'll call it a night. But, guys, you're not going to convince me that... Yeah, okay. You're not going to convince me that he did it. I'm sorry, you're not. You're just not going to convince me of that. Okay, and I know people say false confessions happen all the time, and I know, because my master's was in criminology, right? I spent a lot of time studying false confessions and false eyewitness testimony. Even mistakes are made, and sometimes people do falsely confess, right? That's not what I'm seeing here, and I can't say that with 100% certainty, because I'm not her doctor or whatever. But I have never heard of her saying that she didn't do it. I have heard of her saying that she did do it on multiple occasions, including apparently in this civil lawsuit where they admit that she did it, right? They're not arguing that she did it. It's not up for debate in this trial. Thinking that Patrick is creepy or dead in the eyes or not emotional enough for people, I've heard from people who were in the courtroom who have been interviewed on various YouTube channels saying that he was, crying while off camera during breaks. And just because this man isn't performing for you, for random observers, doesn't mean that he's not in pain. It doesn't mean that he's a psychopath. Sometimes when people are overwhelmed with emotion, they have to shut down. Sometimes they get over emotional. I mean, Lindsay has been crying a lot, right? So people have different reactions. That's why I'm saying it's dangerous to assume that your personal experience and your personal reactions are the only acceptable outcome, because people respond to these things in different ways. All right. We'll take a look at this for a little bit, and then it'll kind of explain some of what I've been viewing, and then we'll call it a night. So, okay.
Girls out there that will come at you for thinking that Patrick Clancy offed his kids instead of his wife. So the fact,
like I said, these are clips from TikTok, but Ruin Leon put this together. I'll put a link to this video in the comments after the stream, and I'll also put it there right now, actually, if you want to watch it. And subscribe to his channel. This is pretty cool. He comments on a lot of cases. Sometimes I agree, sometimes I don't, but on this case I do. So, well, I don't know if I necessarily agree with him about the mental health aspect, but I agree with the conspiracy theory thoughts that he's having here. Okay.
The fact that he remarried so quickly isn't weird to you guys. How he acted so strange when he made that 911 call.
Okay, so nobody has heard the 911 call. Nobody. We read the transcripts. If he was acting strange, it's because he came home to his wife, who was outside after having severely injured herself, and then his kids were dead. Acting so strange during that 911 call. You couldn't even see him while the 911 call was playing in the courthouse either. So every account from people who have been there that I've seen says he was devastated, said it was a horrible, terrible thing for everyone to witness. I don't know what else to tell you. I mean, I guess you can cling to that if you want to, but that's pretty awful if you ask me.
Timeline doesn't add up. He 1000% could have planned all of this, along with his little wifey. Yeah, she could have been involved.
Okay, so he and his wife married, I believe, earlier this year. I don't know how long it was after all of this before they started dating, and I don't care because people have a right to move on when and how they want to. You can think like, ew, that's too fast to move on. But I've seen that plenty of times where people in grief will just, they'll move on quickly. They'll cling to someone else. They'll try to start new. They'll try to escape their past. It happens. Especially, people when their spouse dies. I have seen people get remarried very quickly. His kids died. I'm not surprised at all that he couldn't stay married to her when she killed them. Whether or not he thinks, and he's been supportive of her, right? Whether or not he thinks she's criminally responsible, which it certainly sounds like he does not believe that. He thinks it was the doctor's fault, right? Whether or not, I don't fault the guy, because I don't think if something happened, I was with somebody and they killed any of my family members, even if they were in a state of psychosis, there's no way I could have a romantic relationship with that person again. There's no way. And it's okay to feel that way. This is an insane situation. So, all right. Civil lawsuit pleading is not admittance of guilt is inadmissible. No, they're not using that in the trial, bro. That's not what's happening here. All right. But they have agreed that, they have agreed to stipulate that she did it. Nobody's arguing that she didn't do it. That's because that's not what happened. All right. But blaming the wife here, the new wife, is fucking nuts. That's fucking nuts. You know nothing about that woman. That's nuts. She didn't do anything.
Involved in all this. Lindsay could have been framed and manipulated into thinking that she did this, and this could have been Patrick. There might not have been enough time for Lindsay to actually commit these crimes if you look at the timeline, but her husband 1000% could have. And I know that this trial right now.
Okay, and you could have done it, right? You had enough time to do that. If there's video of you being somewhere else at that time, well, there was video of Patrick being somewhere else at that time too. So what does that really mean, right? I think this lady did it.
Is to prove that Lindsay was going through postpartum psychosis, that she should not be held criminally responsible for the deaths of her kids. I understand that. But to say that this can be a possibility, there are people that are like, no, she did it.
So she did do it. So that's ridiculous. It's not funny that she did it. It's just funny that they're acting like that's a controversy. She did do it. Sorry. I know lots of people don't want to believe that, but it is. Sorry. That's what happened. So the problem with this is we should be focusing more on the issues with, how she was treated in a state of postpartum depression and eventually, allegedly, postpartum psychosis. And instead of doing that, we're sitting here listening to people try to pin it on the husband. Try to say, why wasn't he investigated? The police, he was there, okay? And he was the only one at the house who was unharmed. There's no way the police didn't question him. And they obviously looked into his whereabouts. They even looked at his communications. So it's insane to say he wasn't investigated, in my opinion. Like, these things were ruled out. They didn't just go to his house and Patrick was like, well, she's here and she's, she might die based on the shape she's in right now. And no, the kids are dead in the basement, but, whatever. And they didn't just say, okay, Patrick, sure. Sounds right. And then move on. That's not what happened. That's not what happened. And in the entire time since this horrible crime occurred, this horrible act occurred, she has not denied it and has, in fact, admitted to it, stipulated to it. Okay. And I'll tell you something about psychosis. Because people keep saying, if she was psychotic, she definitely isn't criminally liable. I keep saying, you don't know what psychosis is, right? Psychosis, and again, this is where it's very damaging to assume that our experiences are the only experiences. Psychosis is different in different patients. Sometimes you hear voices. You experience hallucinations, but you know it's not right. You see patients come in and they say, I'm hearing voices, I'm seeing things. This doesn't make sense to me. I know this isn't right. They know it's not right. So hearing voices and seeing things doesn't automatically mean that you are incapable of conforming your conduct, of controlling yourself. So I just want to point that out because I see a lot of that. You can be psychotic and also control yourself. There are also people who are so psychotic, profoundly mentally ill, that they can't control their actions. They're trying to decide what went on here. And to be honest, I don't think the answer is 100% clear. That's why I said I'll go over it again after closing statements. I just don't. I think that people I think that people assume that psychosis is one way or the highway. Everything you're saying about people's theories about Patrick could be said about Lindsay too, but we're batshit for asking questions about the holes in the theory. Did you make the video? Did you make this video? Because I've explained multiple times here. I understand there are people asking questions about inconsistencies that they don't get. But people who come out here and accuse the wife and who say he's Chris Watts 2.0 and make fan fiction stories about that, yeah, that's batshit crazy. If you didn't make the video and you didn't do those things, then I'm not talking about you. So you don't have to take it personally. All right, moving on. How would you feel to be accused of something you didn't do could be said about Lindsay? You don't know. I do, though. Sorry. She did it. She admitted they are not arguing that she didn't do it. The stipulation was denied. No, because if it was denied, they would be arguing about whether or not she did it at this trial. It was not denied. Sorry. I gotta stop reading the comments because some people are just going off, on tangents here, and that don't make sense.
You guys don't think this is a possibility at all? That's why we're talking about it. That's why there's so many videos about people talking about this possibly being what could have happened. Chris Watts did it. He also said that his wife...
That's what I'm saying. Like, Chris Watts did it, so this guy must have done it. Like, don't do that. Most people in the world are not Chris Watts. So that's not a good thing to do. Make a sweeping generalization like that. I've seen people say, like, men are overwhelmingly the family annihilators. Most people are not family annihilators. And women have killed their children while in postpartum mental health crises before. It does happen.
Wife, probably the kids. So, and look where we are with that. Look what happened.
Timeline of events on January 24th, 2023, before 4 p.m. Stress.
I know most of you guys are probably watching the trial, so I won't bore you with this part. here. It is just going over the timeline that you guys have already seen because you watched the trial. And if you haven't, then definitely go to the link that I just put in the comments so you can listen to that. But let's go here. Yeah.
I think Patrick Clancy should be charged. Patrick Clancy should be charged as an accessory, charged for failure to protect. I'm not a prosecutor, thank God, obviously. So I can't pick from the menu of charges that they can manufacture out of thin air. But if anybody should be charged in this, it's Patrick Clancy.
Okay, so this goes back to what I was saying earlier. That view, it doesn't make sense to me. So medical professionals, the ones that they sought help from, are supposed to instruct you if somebody is in such a state that they cannot control themselves and they might harm someone immediately, instruct you to bring them to the hospital or call 911, right? And at that point, they would need to be hospitalized and put on one-to-one observation if they were an immediate threat of harm to themselves. And if they're an immediate threat of harm to others, they would need to be in a locked unit. That's up to them. They have to do that. Nobody should be releasing a patient who needs to be on constant observation every single second of every day. And also, she was not appearing to be psychotic before he left the house, apparently. So you can't predict that somebody is just going to all of a sudden become murderous, especially if it's someone you spend time with and you know that they're trying to get help, you know that they don't want to hurt anybody, and you know they're doing their best. So you don't think that, oh my gosh, if I leave the house, she's going to murder everyone, right? That's not logical. And even if you think he was a bad husband, you've heard answers to questions that have been asked during this trial, but you do not know every day what happened in that household. You don't know the kinds of things. Like, think about all the things you do with your family. Think about all the little things you do for your spouse or for your parents, your siblings. You're not going to hear about this in this trial. You're not going to hear nice things about Patrick and Lindsay's relationship during this trial because Patrick is not on trial. He doesn't need a defense. This isn't like a trial that's supposed to give you the warm and fuzzies about how Lindsay and Patrick were good parents. It's just not going to happen. You're never going to know the ins and outs of their relationship like that. You're going to know details about these specific dates and times that they were asked about. And that is a very small blip on the course of their entire relationship and life together. I'm not willing to judge based on that. And I'm not willing to say somebody should be charged when the medical professionals involved should have, A, hospitalized her if she was really that bad off. And if they couldn't tell that she was that bad off, there's no way he should be expected to know because they're the professionals. And B, they should have called DCF. DCF should have been involved. If there was any chance anyone knew she was going to harm the children, DCF should have been involved. And those professionals are mandated reporters, and that's what they should have done. So no, I don't agree with this, that Patrick, if anybody, should be charged.
Sorry. If this were reversed, if Patrick Clancy had killed his 3 children after calling for help 51 times, Lindsay would have been charged as an accessory, or she would have been charged for her complicity in this. You can't tell me that Patrick Clancy isn't responsible for what happened to his kids.
Didn't do it. She didn't do it. She didn't do it. She didn't do it. You do not kill your kids when you are desperately trying to get help. She knew there was something wrong. She knew she wasn't feeling right. And she took every opportunity to try and get help. She saw multiple doctors. She went to the ER. She checked herself in. She called the suicide hotline numerous times. This is not somebody.
Okay, so counterpoint. If you are somebody who is trying to get help, it's because you know you're on a bad path, that you know you're worried about your state of mind. To the point you know you need help. And I agree that she did not get the amount and level of help that she should have gotten. I agree that the doctors who just prescribed her pills, especially when they can see the controlled meds she's been prescribed in a database, the providers that she's seeing can see that she filled prescriptions for controlled medicines by other doctors before them, and should have stopped and say, hold on, wait a minute. Let's think here for a second based on the prescriptions you reported and what I can see you filled, right? There's a lot of ways that I think those doctors, some of them could have done better, right? And some of them did fail to do everything that they should have done if they really were concerned that she was going to hurt her kids. But I don't think there was any indication that she had a plan to kill her children, right? I agree that the doctor should have done better in some cases. I don't know. I can't tell you with 100% certainty that she planned it and was totally lucid and knew what she was doing. But I can tell you that asking for help a million times is not exonerating somebody from murder if you still go through with it. It appears she did not get the help she was seeking. At some times, it appears she did not take the medication she was prescribed. I know I've seen people throw around the term doctor shopping. I know some of that was, they weren't even doctors. They were, I don't know if it was a nurse practitioner or what. I can't remember what her credentials were, but I've seen people say that she wasn't compliant with treatment. I've heard what they were saying on the stand, and I know that asking for help and not getting it is not necessarily a free pass to act on your impulses or act in accordance with the hallucinations you are experiencing. It is entirely possible for some to experience hallucinations and not act on them. However, there are others who can experience these symptoms who are completely decompensated and who can't control themselves. You have to kind of decide based on what you're seeing, which one of those things you think it is. So, this, like, saying that she didn't do it because she asked for help is not really, it's not logical to me. It's just not. So.
Who is going to kill her kids? This is somebody who wants to get better. Let's look at the timeline, shall we? So her husband's gone for approximately 1 hour. He just ran to CVS and get some food. She knew he wasn't going to be gone for long. So she had time to do what she did to all 3 of her children. Crush up her pills, dissolve them in water, drink them. Do what she did to herself in 3 different places, and then throw herself out the window. Do you think that that's something that you're going to do on that kind of time crunch when your husband travels for work, and she could have done it while he was out of town?
So if we're to believe that she really did this like in a state of psychosis, a psychotic break, or in a moment of where a decompensated state, you don't plan that. You don't think I'll go off the rails while he's out of the house on business. I'll wait till he's gone for a long time. That's not logical, right? Like I just said, it's different for everybody. And if you are truly in a decompensated state where you cannot control yourself and you don't understand reality and what's happening around you, you didn't plan for that. Nobody plans for that. That's awful. So that's just not, I'm sorry, that's just not going to work. The only reason that would be a logical explanation is if you think she planned to kill her children and was fully lucid and understood what she was doing. That then you could go down this line of thinking, but you have to kind of concede to one or the other.
And she would have had all the time in the world. And I understand that people are going to say she had a mental break. That was it. She was going through psychosis. She hit her breaking point. She wasn't thinking straight. She just did it. Then why was her body temperature down to 82 degrees?
And here's again why I say it's so important to not think that our experiences are the only experiences. And that's why I'm saying I don't know with 100% certainty what was going on in her mind. I can tell you like what I've seen in the past and what I think based on people's behavior patterns, but I wasn't there, right? I don't know exactly what she did and when she started coming up with this. So why was her body temperature down to 80 degrees? I've seen some people say it was impossible. I've seen some nurses chime in on TikTok, some doctors even chime in and say some of this stuff was weird. And I've seen some of them say this was entirely possible and not weird at all. So again, we can't assume that one person's word is gospel. Don't even don't think that mine is either. Like I can sit here and tell you guys my opinions, but I can't I'm not telling you have to agree with me. I'm not telling you that if you don't agree with me, I hate you. That's not what I'm saying, right? I'm saying I think some people are going too far, and I'm saying there are different people saying different things, and so you should be careful to listen to both sides, right? Listen to both sides. And I have heard some people lay this stuff out and ask the kinds of questions that some people are asking in a respectful and logical way. And then I see this. This is not it. And this is the kind of stuff that's spreading on TikTok. and it's gross. So it just shows a total lack of empathy and understanding, in my opinion, for the people involved. I mean, if you really care about the outcome for this woman and about what she went through, and you think that she was failed like profoundly and that she deserves better than to go to prison for intentional murder, if you really believe that, then stop writing it off. Stop with the crazy conspiracies and definitely saying she didn't do it, okay? Because she says otherwise. So.
Because it takes a lot longer for that to happen than the small amount of time that she had after she threw herself out the 12-foot window, broke her spine out a 12-foot window. Come on. Come on.
Yeah. Don't throw yourself out a 12-foot window, guys. You might break something. Don't do that.
How's long to die in the snow, Jed McCabe? How's long to die in the snow?
5:15 p.m. Patrick left the house to run the errands, and Clancy.
Okay, so that's enough of that. But this is Leon. If you guys don't know what he looks like, hang on. I'm not gonna watch the rest of it. You guys can watch his video if you want. That's Leon. Anyways, I think he's pretty cool. Like I said, I agree with his commentary, like his commentary on the theories, the internet stuff on this case. Some of the other points that he has about, you know, Lindsay in general, I don't know if I necessarily 100% agree. I think there are some other cases he covers that I totally agree with him on. There's some that I don't, but overall, I like Leon. So if you are interested in following a new channel to listen to some of that, then go ahead and do it. All right. I think that's enough for me tonight, guys. I talked for a lot longer. I wanted to make this 30 minutes, so I talked for a lot longer than I meant to. All in all, I'm going to say this one more time because I know some people weren't here at the start. I've seen some people discussing this in a manner that they keep it respectful, and they say, like, this doesn't make sense to me, or this doesn't add up, or there are questions about this. And then there are other people who say, this man is Chris Watts 2.0. He definitely did it. He's a murderer. He drugged her in her drink, and then she totally didn't do it 100%. And like, that is batshit crazy to me. Sorry. If you state that as a fact and you start making up details like that, he drugged her drink and stuff, I think that's crazy. And you should stop. If you're asking a question, ask your question. If you say, this doesn't make sense, say that. But you can get yourself into real trouble making up fan fiction about things like this. And also, it's just totally inappropriate to like make up stuff about him drugging her and throwing her out a window and shit like that. Like, that's bullshit. All right. That's my opinion, guys. Agree with it or not. I am, that's how I feel. So if you really hated it, I would say definitely don't watch the rest if I ever talk about this again, which I plan to after closing statements. If you did appreciate it, then I'll be back after the trial's over to talk about it some more. But I don't want to do a day-by-day thing because this is really, it's a tragedy, and it's not like, it's not fun to watch this, but I think it's important. All right. So, all right, guys, I love you, even if you have a conspiracy theory, and I will, I will see you guys next time. Okay.